Hey guys, Simone Fender 101, and sorry about that, but I was fully expecting this to be a two-parter video. Because, the space on the camera I'm using there's not too much space, so I have to constantly, delete the videos I record. Um, but here's part two. Now, the question I was on was Lundrick's questions. The first one, and which is the one I was answering, was top three matches during each of these years. Which I have on a list here. The first, 2002 was very easy. It was the triple threat feud between AJ Styles, Jerry Lynn, and Loki, who right around this time was about to win or already won the Ring of Honor Championship. As a side note, but the first match they had was and what I thought was the best one. When I rank the top three matches, I'm going down by the order that they chronologically happened, not so much the listing. Although I will mention if one was the best or not. um, the first match they had was it was that fatal four-way elimination two falls elimination match. A little bit complicated, but it ended up being a fantastic match. It was between Styles, Jerry Lynn, Loki, and Psychosis. Absolutely fantastic match, especially the last throws of the match between Styles and Lynn. That was absolutely great. Although I think this match would have been better if it was slightly longer and they gave Psychosis more time to wrestle, because they gave plenty time to wrestle for Loki, Jerry Lynn, and AJ Styles, but not Psychosis, who, unlike those other three guys, had the biggest name by virtue of being in WCW and being a big cruiserweight guy. The next match they had was their regular triple threat match, and by the way, that first one was their best. The next match they had was their regular triple threat match. It was Jerry Lynn. It was again Styles, Lynn, and Loki. It was the straight up triple threat match. AJ Styles walked in as the X Division champion because he won that first match, and he lost it here in a triple threat match when Loki pinned Jerry Lynn to win the title. Absolutely fantastic match. And the third match they had was the ladder match. A few weeks later, Loki came in as the champion, and it ended up being Jerry Lynn walking out as X Division champion when he got the title from top of the ladder. All three of these matches were absolutely fantastic. This is what I was talking about earlier when I said that the X Division was at its peak during this period because it was just so fucking awesome. Hold on a second. Gotta blow my nose. Can I make it? Yes. Anyways, there's that. 2003 and 2004 was a little harder to choose as compared to 02, 05, or 06. But I did eventually choose, albeit it was hard. The first match was Jeff Jarrett versus Raven. Now, I have to admit, Jeff Jarrett and Raven had a hell of a feud back in TNA in the early years. And a lot of people say that Raven should have won the title probably in this match here. And he did win the title, but in 2005 it was 2 years too late. But he had a still, in my opinion, a pretty damn good feud with Jeff Jarrett. And they had a great match here. The next match, and I kind of switched the numbers here on accident, but I know the timeline, was the triple threat match between Jeff Jarrett, AJ Styles, and Raven. Which was a great triple threat match. Great performance from all three guys. Raven was taken out of the match a bit later to the match. Jarrett, by the way, beat Raven in that other match, just to remind you. And this ended up being AJ Styles' first NWA Championship title win. His first world title win, as he would go on to win the TNA title, IWGP title, and hopefully in WWE after the brand split, he'll win a a world championship in WWE. Let's hope. And the third and what I thought was the best match of the year was Triple X versus America's Most Wanted in a steel cage match. Remember, this was back during the when the ring was still 4 sides. It didn't become 6 sides until mid to late 2004. This was back when the ring was 4 sides, so they still had a great cage match, just not as good as another one I'll mention later on. But that was the best match of the year, in my opinion. 2004, slightly easier to choose, but at the same time, slightly harder. One match I knew had to be number 1, and I'll get to that. But one of the matches I put on here was AJ Styles versus Raven. Now, to pick the other 2 matches was really difficult because all of them were along the same quality. And my opinion may change over time, but as of now, one of the top matches of 2004 was his title match with Raven. This was soon after AJ Styles beat Jeff Jarrett to win his second NWA title reign, NWA title, and was in his second title reign. This was when AJ Styles was defending his title every single week against opponents. It was Ron Killings, Chris Harris, Raven, and he eventually lost like a week or so later in like a match that it was like a gauntlet style match. But this was a great match. Styles and Raven, I thought, had somewhat underrated chemistry because they didn't have that many matches. They had a couple matches in 03 and a couple matches in 04. But other than that, you know, they didn't have too many matches together. Singles matches, I should say. Not so much, you know, not multi-man matches like, say, King of the Mountain. Because they had plenty together in multi-man matches. But I think they had good chemistry together. Not great chemistry like Styles had with Daniels and Jerry Lynn and Samoa Joe, but you know the guys that you would expect would succeed. I mean, guys that you would expect to at least have good chemistry with. That's what I meant to say. Another match they had. Another match was the King of the Mountain title. The King of the Mountain match itself. This was a good first King of the Mountain match. Jarrett won clean, considering the fact that there was like no disqualifications. It was because in that gauntlet match I mentioned a second ago, Ron Killings, R-Truth, beat Styles to win the title, and Ron Killings defended his title in the King of the Mountain match against Jarrett, Styles, Raven, and Chris Harris. You're probably wondering why the hell is Chris Harris here if he's a tag team guy with Storm, with James Storm as America's Most Wanted. Well, James Storm was out with an injury around the time. So that's why. They just kind of thrusted him in the singles department, and he actually did pretty damn well for himself. But yeah, it was a great first King of the Mountain title match. There have been others down the line. 2 more that I'll say were better, but this was still a very good match. Again, match of the year, Triple X versus America's Most Wanted. This is the match you guys know, the turning point match. Yeah, you know what match I'm talking about. The 6 sides of steel, very long match. The losing team must split. Christopher Daniels and Elix Skipper versus Storm and Harris. Absolutely fantastic. A lot of blood. And of course, how could we forget that famous spot where Elix Skipper walked along the top of the 6 sides of steel. It's not just a normal steel cage. The 6 sides of steel is like it's like it's like a very skinny cage that just happens to have 6 sides. And the top of it's not like in most cage matches where you have a top to kind of walk on, as dangerous as it is. He walked on like the steel cage equivalent of a tightrope, and successfully gave, I think it was Chris Harris, a Hurricane Rana from the top rope. The top part of the cage. That was a crazy ass spot. God damn it. Two other crazy spots were right afterwards when Christopher Daniels did a top cage elbow drop from there, and then later on in the match they did like a suplex, dungeon, like Tower of Doom thing where one guy would be on top of another, then on top of another, then on top of another kind of thing. Starting to lose my voice here for whatever reason. Maybe I talk too much. But that had to be the best match. You cannot. That was a great match. One of the best tag steel cage matches I've ever seen. Up there, like probably the top 5. Below Magnum TA and Tully Blanchard. Below Bret and Owen Hart, but it's up there. It's that close. The next set of matches, 2005, a hell of a lot easier to choose. AJ Styles versus Christopher Daniels at Against All Odds, that 30-minute Iron Man match. That was a classic. Styles, Daniels, and Samoa Joe at Unbreakable. I mean, come on. That's the best match TNA ever had. That has to be on there. And AJ Styles versus Samoa Joe at Turning Point about 2 months later. For the longest time, that was AJ Styles' best singles match that he ever had. Man, my throat really is giving out. 2006, again, a hell of a lot easier to choose from. AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels versus LAX, the No Surrender Ultimate X match. AJ Styles versus Christopher Daniels. AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels going versus LAX at Bound for Glory, that 6 sides of steel cage match. Yeah, surprise. Daniels in another star-studded or another show-stealing cage match. Yeah. And, of course, the best match of the year, many people agree with me, Angle and Joe from Genesis 2006. By the way, guys, if you wanted a couple honorable mentions, 2005 had several. Styles and Joe at Sacrifice. Styles, Petey Williams, and Chris Sabin in that Ultimate X match at Final Resolution. Styles and Daniels at the Iron Man match at Bound for Glory. Sabin and Joe at, I think it was No Surrender. This was before No Surrender was a September pay-per-view. It used to be it was once a July pay-per-view. But yeah, look at the common name there, Styles. I keep saying Styles. This was the peak of Styles' high flying, I should say. Okay, next question, Lundrick. Best WWE acquisition during this time. I said this earlier. Rhino was great. Team 3D was great. Raven was great. But Christian Cage. It's got to be Christian Cage. I already explained earlier in part 1, if you want to find out exactly why he was that good. Do you feel like in 2005 Monty Brown should have been the face of the company? Not exactly. But I don't think he should have been the face of the company. Let's face it, the face of the company was AJ Styles. Wow. Did not feel good, but I keep going. Yeah, Monty Brown should have been NWA champion. If there was any guy TNA dropped the ball with during the time, it was Monty Brown. Monty Brown was one of the big guys that was on the rise. And in TNA, TNA TNA didn't fuck up too many times during that time period. They did with Monty Brown. Top 5 pay-per-views during this time. Now, I also wrote this down. And trust me, this was not easy. Again, in order from when it chronologically happened. Final Resolution 2005. No real biggie there. Great matches. Ironically enough, Jeff Jarrett and Monty Brown. When they didn't put the title on him. The long-term plan apparently was supposed to turn him heel in line with Jeff Jarrett, which was fucking stupid. But a good title match between Brown and Jarrett. A great tag team match between Rude and Team Canada, Rude and Young, and Eric Young, versus America's Most Wanted. A triple threat number 1 contenders match for later in the night, which was Brown, Abyss, and DDP, which was... Or was it Nash and DDP? I think it was Nash and DDP. It was still a decent match. Styles, Williams, Petey Williams, and Chris Sabin in that Ultimate X match I mentioned earlier. And another match I think it's overlooked just a little bit. Elix Skipper and Sanjay Dutt had a pretty good match there. Lockdown 2005. A bunch of great matches here. The Fatal 4-Way Escape the Cage match between Shocker, AAA guy, Shocker, Sabin, Matt Bentley, and Sanjay Dutt. Matt Bentley, by the way, is the cousin of Shawn Michaels. Jeff Jarrett and Raven, America's Most Wanted, and I think the Naturals. I'm going by memory here. And of course, Styles and Abyss. That was a fantastic match. No Surrender 2005. I think this is an overlooked show. Of course, there was Joe, Samoa Joe and Chris Sabin, AJ Styles and Sean Waltman, Raven and Abyss at a chain match. A few other good matches here. A couple of good tag team matches. I think it was America's Most Wanted and the Naturals, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe not. And I think... And there must have been some kind of match with Jeff Jarrett. One thing I was happy about, Jeff Jarrett was not in the title picture at that time. That was awesome. Skipping ahead here. Bound for Glory in 2006. Great show. Again, Styles and Daniels versus LAX, that cage match. Chris Sabin versus Senshi, who's really low-key. I don't know why they just didn't call him low-key. Samoa, I forget all the members, but I think it was Joe, Raven, Abyss, and Rhino in a Monsters Ball match. Hold on. Sting and Jeff Jarrett had a pretty good main event. Oh, no, wait. It wasn't Rhino. What am I talking about? Rhino was in the match with Christian Cage. The 8 Mile Street Fight match. Number 5 was Genesis, 2006. Styles and Christian, Angle and Joe, Daniels and Sabin. A couple other good matches, but really those 3 matches. And, yeah, that was a great show. And keep in mind, guys, out of there were so many good pay-per-views TNA pay-per-views during that time, it was really hard to choose. Other honorable mentions, Lockdown 2006, Slammiversary 2005, Unbreakable 2005. I think Against All Odds 2006. Destination X 2006. Slammiversary 2006, I think. So again, a lot of great pay-per-views. Against all odds 2005. A lot of great pay-per-views. So it was really hard to choose. Okay, enough with the lists. Now time to actual questions that I can talk about. No offense, Lundrick. Thoughts on the weekly pay-per-view concept? Last question from Lundrick. God damn it. God damn. I guess I'm not over my sickness yet, but I'm feeling much better. Thoughts on the weekly pay-per-view concept? It was a good concept because they couldn't secure a TV deal like they had with Spike back then. So they were paying weekly to have those shows air, because remember, every single one of them was live. So they were always trying their best. It's kind of like how NXT was for the longest time as a developmental territory from 2012 to 2014. No special events. There was no special takeover events. Back then, and there wasn't either for TNA. It wasn't until 2 years, same thing with TNA and NXT was like the same thing. It wasn't until like 2 years when they actually had events, like big time events. TNA was the once a month pay-per-view. NXT was the every few months takeover specials. But again, it was a great. It needed to happen, and we got some great matches during that time. I mentioned some of them. A couple others were Styles and Chris Harris. AJ Styles in several matches he had with Jeff Jarrett. Styles and Styles and Amazing Red had some good matches. Triple X had some good matches. We also saw CM Punk on a couple of these weekly pay-per-views, which is, fun to see. Okay, Diesel 101 Raw. What if Goldberg came into TNA in 2004, 2005? Well, I think he would have had a better run than his WWE run. He would have been a house of fire. Are you kidding me? TNA would have taken full advantage of that, put the world title on him, and have him mow down several of the guys. The only problem is with that is, like with some WWE guys, they would just have him beat their top stars, and then eventually Goldberg would tire out, and they would have to go back to status quo. God damn. But I think Goldberg would have had a fine run. A good run as NWA champion. Some good matches with some of the younger, more flexible talent like Styles and Joe. And speaking of which, how fucking awesome would Joe and Goldberg be? Like, that would be a war. Goldberg and Monty Brown. Goldberg and, I was about to say Kevin Nash. No, that would have sucked balls. Goldberg and, Christian Cage. Effie stuck around in late 2005. I really am throwing out my voice, aren't I? If Chris Benoit came into TNA in 2005, 2006, would he still be alive today? I don't know, man. I don't know. Because you gotta look at it. It wasn't, in my opinion, it wasn't just the concussions that led to that horrible tragedy. I mean, Chris Benoit, for many people, and if Chris Jericho is to be believed, Chris Benoit had been going downhill since the death of Eddie Guerrero and a couple other friends' death, literally in the months following. And he was really good friends with guys like the Big Boss Man, Ray Traylor. And he died in 2004. And it's not easy seeing all your friends around you just die off like that. And that's what happened. Boss Man, Guerrero, a Japanese manager or trainer he had. Another Japanese wrestler. It would have been. I think it was actually his own trainer. Maybe Color Kowalski. I forget. But it was just tragic. It was completely tragic. He would have had great matches with guys like Styles and Daniels and Joe. I keep mentioning those guys, but would he still be alive? I can't answer that. Okay. How would and third question here for Diesel? How would Bryan Danielson do in TNA if he came around this time? Well, I answered this question earlier. He would have done great. Again, he probably would have been a great tag team guy and a great X Division guy. World Championship material? Probably not, but he still would have done well for himself. What do you think of the Canadian Destroyer? Well, on one hand, it's a beautiful move. It takes a lot of athleticism for Pete Williams to do what he did. He made that move big. On the other hand, the move you could tell was so, not fake, but it was so choreographed. And there's absolutely no way WWE would let Williams use that for even a second. It's not even up for consideration. But in my opinion, it's an absolutely beautiful move. I'll say that. Which old-time veteran do you think was best utilized by TNA during this time frame? Well, it depends on your definition of a veteran. An old guy, a guy who's really good at working, a guy who knows all about the business but is not a wrestler. You gotta think. There wasn't a lot of old-time guys. And no, Jeff Jarrett does not count. He wasn't old. None of them were really that old, except for maybe Kevin Nash. But he was not utilized that well either. If I had to give an answer, probably be Raven. I mean, yeah, Christian Cage was a veteran, but he wasn't an old-time veteran. Neither were the Dudley Boys, who had been around for a while, but they weren't, and they were in their 30s. I gotta go with Raven because when he came to TNA, he was 40, and yet he was still putting on great matches. He was doing very well for himself in TNA. He was utilized well. He taught some of the younger talent, I think, like he did with CM Punk. And he gave TNA just a little bit of a push back in its early days because they didn't have a lot of WWE acquisitions. And Raven was the first. Let's face it, Raven was the first WWE acquisition. Raven was an old guy. Was not as old as, some of the guys they brought in later on, but like Scott Steiner. But he was 40. I almost forgot. There was another guy that did better in TNA than WWE. Scott Steiner. At least in 06. God, I really feel sick, guys. But I'm willing to finish this. It's got to be Raven. Are there any wrestlers you would have liked to see come to TNA sooner? Not really. I guess Christian Cage. But actually, no, not Christian, because he did still have some good things in 2005. Rhino and the Dudley Boys. They should have came into TNA in like late 2003, early 2004, because at that time the writing was on the wall. They weren't doing anything. They were doing barely anything with those guys, WWE. If they came into late 2003, early 2004, trust me, they would have had some very good matches. But that was only like a year or so off. But still, those two guys, because WWE wasn't doing much with them in 2004 and in 2005 when they left. Okay, last set of questions. Mr. Beetle 890. thoughts on Christian Cage's run in TNA? Well, I already mentioned that in part 1, so great run, but go to part 1 if you want to get the full thoughts. Biggest missed opportunity from this time period. I'll go in a little bit more detail, but